Hello, welcome to this little video on CMI Assignment 501 and specifically Assessment Criteria 3.2. So this is video 10 in the series of 12. We are getting there. So 3.2. This is part of task 2, where we need to create a profile of a manager whose operational or departmental responsibilities. And we need to evaluate the factors that impact on the selection of communication techniques required to be effective in a management and leadership role. There are a few strands to this, and one thing I think that I've seen where people have come a little unstuck is where people have just focused on communication techniques rather than the factors that impact on the selection of communication techniques. So we just need to pull this apart a little bit just to make sure we answer the right question. It's worth reading this one a few times just because the way that it's presented is a little bit challenging. It's also an evaluate question. So we need to look at strengths and weaknesses, arguments for and against, similarities and differences. We need to judge evidence from different perspectives and make a valid conclusion or reasoned judgment, theory where applicable. So yeah, we need to have the word however in here. So it's going to be on one hand this, but on the other hand that. So we need to present a balanced argument, two perspectives, and then draw a conclusion. I'm actually for this one going to provide an example of how you might respond to it. So factors that might impact selection of communication techniques. What are we getting at here? What types of things might we be looking at? So some examples could be, well, one factor could be the urgency of the situation. So how time pressured is the situation, i.e. a critical incident requiring immediate action. So if a situation has to be responded to immediately, that is going to drive the selection of communication techniques. Perhaps we might be a little bit more shouty, directive than we would be in a normal day. Another factor would be the skill level or experience of people in the team. And a third factor, the preferences and personalities of colleagues we're working with. So different people might prefer to be communicated with in different ways. There's things like neurodiversity to think about. Some people like to plan and prepare very carefully for meetings and for communications, and so putting people on the spot and that type of thing just isn't going to work for them. So there's lots to go at. You may, in your context, have different factors that you would like to bring and discuss. But as I said, the key thing here is it's not so much the communication techniques, it's the factor that drives the selection of the communication technique that's key. So again, three examples there. And so how might I go about actually writing this? So flushing it out a little bit. Here is an example for the factor of the level of experience in the team you're managing. Right, so this is our factor. How could we address this point? Okay, an example. Experienced colleagues may only require minimal support when the manager delegates tasks. Sometimes the desired outcome is all that's required. Ooh, authoritative leadership style. This is what you need to achieve. How you get there is up to you. If you've seen some of the earlier videos, that'll make sense. A less experienced team may need some instruction when work is delegated. The task may need to be accompanied by an explanation, a demonstration, opportunity to practice and develop skills. So it might be that for teams less experienced and we're delegating something that they haven't done before, the communication style might need to be a bit instructional. We might need to carefully explain, take our time to talk through what needs to be done. We might even need to be a little bit teachery in our communication technique. However, so again, it's evaluation so that we can't just leave it at that. We have to look at an alternative perspective. Even less experienced colleagues can be effective problem solvers. The manager should be careful not to remove all autonomy and opportunities for creative thinking. Delegating the task and then asking the team to consider how they would undertake it before offering instruction may be an appropriate middle path. So it's being careful that we need to communicate clearly. We need to outline what we need to get to, but what we don't want to do is completely disempower that team by being overly directive or controlling in our communication approach. So perhaps following up with a question, so including questions in how we communicate here so that the team is invited to think and contribute to the plan might be even better. So hopefully that makes sense. So again, you can see we are talking about communication techniques, but the key thing is to relate them to the factor that we're discussing. Here, it's the level of experience in the team that we're managing. The other thing is, yep, absolutely key is to remember to put in that word however. So we're putting forward two different perspectives and then balancing the two. That shows evaluation. It's just important that we don't just take one perspective or propose one thing. It's that we look at a balanced argument, two different perspectives. Looking at one way of going, but then critiquing or challenging that way of working. And then we are demonstrating evaluation. There we go. So hopefully that makes sense. This assessment criteria does confuse people, I think, because it's the way it's written, and it can, you can jump straight on to talking about communication techniques rather than the factors which determine the choice of communication techniques. So hopefully that video has been helpful in supporting you in writing this slightly trickier assessment criteria.